The right to a high school level education is something that most people take for granted. Indeed, parents today often confront an array of options when it comes to the types of educational opportunities available to their children. But this has not always been the case. Join us today for a discussion with the KHS Research Fellow who studies the Pine Mountain Settlement School, who will talk about shifting views on education in Kentucky as we explore the pages of Kentucky history with Kentucky Chronicles. Kentucky Chronicles is inspired by the work of researchers from across the world who have conducted research at the Kentucky Historical Society, or who have contributed to the scholarly journal, the Register of the Kentucky Historical Society, which has been published continuously since 1903. Hi, I'm Daniel J. Burge, the host of Kentucky Chronicles, a podcast of the Kentucky Historical Society. I'm the associate editor of the Register of the Kentucky Historical Society, and I also coordinate our Research Fellows program, which brings in researchers from across the world to conduct research in the rich archival holdings of the Kentucky Historical Society. Adrien Lievin earned his MA in American History at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. He is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Lille in France. He has worked in France, Poland, and the United States. His dissertation focuses on the Pine Mountain Settlement School and is currently entitled Progressive Education and Industrial Capitalism Before and During the New Deal in Harlan County, Kentucky, 1913 to 1944. My first question is one that I ask a lot of people, but it's a little different since you're our first fellow who is here from France. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What brought you here, your background?
So I was born and raised in northern France, on the coast actually, and I started studying American history back in college in 2009. Yeah, 2009. So I got my BA the University of Lille, right next to Belgium, actually, so the extreme north of France. I went to Norway as well to study American history. You can study American history pretty much anywhere in the world. Just if you like traveling, it's a good thing. And then I went to UT Knoxville. I got my MA. I got a pretty amazing time. UT Knoxville was such an amazing experience. And there I got to specialize and study American education, the history of American schooling and education. So I got my MA and I went back to France. I taught American history actually for some years. I just started, 2 years ago, started a PhD in American history in Lille. So I went back to France because family in France, and it just felt like, for some time before maybe relocating here, I would go back. And I just got, a bunch of fellowships, including yours, which I'm extremely grateful for. And just doing research right now to write my dissertation and, keep doing this PhD thing that I started.
So I know I've talked to you about this, and we've discussed this a little bit, but what's the reception in France when you tell them that you're studying the United States? What's sort of the reaction? Are people interested in that? Is that sort of seen as being a different field of study? Or can you give us a little background on what that's like to study the U.S. in a country that's not the United States, where most of our fellows here are from the U.S.? So
well, that's actually a good question, because very often, when you tell, I would say, regular people, oh, I study American history, they just, come up with, oh, yeah, it's such a country that's so young that there's not much history to study about it, and always feel like a bunch of slaps to give, but well, if you study American history actually in France, it's pretty it's interesting at the same time. I quite don't get it, but you have to study it in the foreign language department.
Okay.
Even if it's history, which doesn't make sense, because it makes sense to study, history with, those who study the Middle Ages, European history, but they kind of, pushed us in the foreign language department, which is, I mean, it doesn't change much to what you do, but...
And you said you taught, when you were here in the U.S., you taught French for a little bit.
Yeah, I did.
Which makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, got a TA-ship in the foreign language department. According to them, my French is pretty good. I've been practicing for 30 years now, so it just felt like I could do it. So I was teaching French in the foreign language department and taking classes in the history department.
I was going to say, in the U.S., we always kind of panic with our foreign language exams for the PhD, so I had to do Spanish, and it was bad. I mean, my Spanish is not good, so I was going to say that's a definite perk, is you don't have to worry about that. But since you're here with us, can you tell us a bit more about your project? How did you get interested in it, and what sort of are you looking at here at the KHS?
Alrighty. So when I was doing my MA, I was looking for a subject. So I was looking for a school, actually. School that I could study, and getting to read a bunch of books of academic studies. I discovered Pine Mountain Settlement School, which is in Kentucky, kind of right next to West Virginia and Tennessee. And I kind of, at first, I wanted to do a Tennessee school because I was based in Tennessee, so it kind of made sense to stay in that area. But I found the Pine Mountain School and just felt like there was something in there. It's history, it's goals, what happened, what they did. So I just kept reading, about that school, and I was like, okay, I got it, found my subject. So that's how, I found this project, pretty much.
And it seems to be a quite good project in the sense of you've been finding stuff all over the place.
Totally. So, and I mean, there's probably a bunch of schools around the country that tried to do the same, or that did the same, but Pine Mountain was one of a kind, I would say. And should I tell right now about?
Yeah, let's go ahead. We can dig into it. Kind of, what is Pine Mountain?
Okay, so Pine Mountain was established in the early 1910s by a local. She was from the area, by Catherine Pettit. Pettit.
You got it.
I always struggle with her name. So she was a educated woman from the area. So she ran the school for 20 years. And if you want to read about it, there's quite a few actually studies, pretty good studies about the first 20 years of the school. But when I went through all the archives, I was in Berea for quite some time. I had such an amazing experience there. It was beautiful, and the city, not the city, but the town.
Right.
The location was pretty nice too. But when I was going through all those archives, it just felt to me that the 1930s, during the Great Depression and the New Deal, there was so much more to tell about that school, because all those, all the books, pretty much all the books, all the articles, all that had been written on Pine Mountain kind of focused on the Pettit years, and you couldn't find, still to this day, you cannot find much about what happened next, and they did quite a bunch of things, because Harlan County, coal mines, the Great Depression hit pretty bad that area, so the school just kind of started a whole new curriculum. They established new educational things, and the vocational guidance. They started a cooperative store. They had citizenship committees. They wanted they wanted their students to be kind of leaders in their community. So they had students, just like help around, do things to uplift the community who had been hit very bad by the Great Depression. They also started to, that's something I haven't, read much about, archive-wise. Well,
you got it.
Cut it. When you edit this thing, cut it. But studied the environment and think of themselves as the, how can I say it, as they live in a environment, and if they don't take care of their environments, the whole community is not going to be good.
Right.
Pollution and coal mining has been pretty rough with the nature around this area. So yeah, Pine Mountain just in the 1930s, they just did so much, and they just started new things, and that's what I want to focus on at the moment.
So just to give our listeners a sense of this, can you explain a little bit about the dissertation process, what that's like, what you have to do with these sources? We've talked to people who are sort of in that process of writing an article, doing a book, but can you give us a better sense of what it means to write a dissertation, what you're actually going to be doing over the course of the next couple of years with these sources that you found?
Well, the overall not writing, but the overall dissertation process, I would say it's a blessing and it's a curse at the same time.
Yes.
You go through, it's a roller coaster, emotionally. So you start with pretty much reading a bunch of secondary sources, because you have to, find an argument, like a perspective that's kind of new. I mean, you want to add something to the field. You don't want to write something that's been written, a bunch of times. So you kind of have to, read about, education in the States, education in Appalachia, education in Kentucky, education in Eastern Kentucky. So yeah, you have to come up with something new. I mean, something that would benefit the field of the history of education. And once you've got this, you kind of look for archival places, like old documents, old written documents and correspondence, and official. When you study school, they have boards of trustees, reports. So you just travel around. You dig into old dusty boxes, which is pretty exciting actually. I mean, that's my favorite part of the whole research process. And you digitize as much as possible. It's actually something they told me back in France. But the thing is, I mean, being far away from my sources, when I come here, I'm just taking pictures and scanning as much as possible. So when I get back home, I get to, I mean, it takes a while actually, but to process, to read all these documents. And once you've done that, you have to come up with an outline, which first sight, when they told me about the outline, I kind of expected something, expected this thing to, I don't know, take maybe like a week or two. And the outline is, pretty intense, part of the dissertation process. So you have to do this, and then, then you teach at the same time. I mean, I have the chance to teach, so, and not everybody has this chance.
But it does. It keeps you so busy.
Yeah.
I mean, between the teaching, student emails, asking questions, and then you're still doing research.
It's just, I would say it's like, two sides of like the same coin. I mean, and I know, when you're a grad student, being a TA is such a blessing. So, you got to do both at the same time. It can be quite intense, but, as long as you have nice students.
Who don't ask too many questions.
Yeah, they can ask questions, as long as, I can answer those questions. And so, yeah, you just, the outline, you teach, and then you start writing. And the writing can be, quite intense too. I've just starting right now. I haven't written much, but all my, fellow grad students and my colleagues told me that, writing could be, there are days you just feel like, you've got some inspiration. So you write and you write and you write, and, you're quite happy with what you write, but there are some days,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
you just, you know, the flow is really bad, so it's can be quite, you know, torture.
Yes.
But that's, you know, the whole game, and, you know, it's
And at least you've got the sources now. So as you're
Yeah.
kind of going, that
Yeah,
is
totally.
a big part of the struggle. Which does lead in nicely into the next question. This is one I always ask as well. What was your favorite source you found? Or was there a source that you found while you were here at KHS that either surprised you or that you think will help down the road?
So actually, I'm just gonna. I mean, there's been, you know, visited quite a few institutions. So pretty much, you know, in every institution, I found something mind blowing. But I would say here at KHS, so just roughly, Pine Mountain at some point, and it's something I found, you know, in the curriculum and, you know, syllabi, but I couldn't find much about it before. But in the 1930s, they kind of started teaching about family planning, because, you know, the argument was that Harlan County in the Pine Mountain area, I mean, there was starving, you know, unemployment was pretty bad, so, you know, money was, you know, was not coming in.
Right.
And they just, you know, taught their students that having, you know, too many kids wouldn't be helpful if, you know, the bank account was pretty empty. So, you know, out of economic reasons, they just started, I wouldn't say preach, because, you know, I mean, preaching may be too strong, but it was part of the school, you know, curriculum to teach students about family planning. And, you know, you may have as many kids as you want, but, you know, as long as your economic, you know, situation is not that good, just wait, you know, just wait a few more years, make money, and then you can have, you know, a large family. And so, and actually, one of your, you know, in one of your boxes, I found a huge file about it. So, just like, you know, I mean, I was telling you, a few minutes ago, here I'm mostly, you know, taking pictures, digitizing. So I haven't had time to read this whole, you know, and get into this whole file, but, you know, it's pretty thick. So I'm pretty sure, you know, it's gonna be quite helpful, and I'm gonna find, you know, a bunch of, you know, amazing information. So.
And on our end, it's always fun because we get to see researchers come in and see Adrien out there, and they're just going through all the documents and just taking pictures and taking pictures. So it is a lot of work, and it keeps you busy, but at the same time, it does come in handy down the road when you're writing and doing all those days of writing, and you're like, oh, I got those sources, and then you can kind of tie them in. So there is one last question that I always like to ask as well, and this deals with Kentucky. I know you went to school in Tennessee. What is the thing that has surprised you the most about Kentucky, your trip here, being at KHS? It can just be the state itself. Was there anything that just stood out to you or surprised you, or that you just did not know about Kentucky before you got to KHS?
So Kentucky, horses.
Okay.
Actually, one of my best friends, but, you know, back in France, she's quite crazy about horses. And when she learned about, like, coming to Kentucky, she told me, oh, you know, like horses and, you know, Lexington horses are quite famous. So, you know, back in my, you know, back home in northern France, we actually eat horses. So, you know, I guess it's not something you guys do here.
I was going to say, I had not heard of that until you explained it to me. So
we actually eat horses. So, it made me smile to think about it. You know. And, well, funny thing, which I actually quite like, is, you know, we've got quite a few French names, like, you know, Bourbon County, like Versailles.
Yes, you got
how you pronounce
Kentucky
it?
version.
Yeah. I've got Paris. Actually, it feels like home when I'm here, you know. So, and bourbon, because it's something, you know, we drink back home. And actually it makes sense, you know, but had no clue you know, like the liquor came from here. So, you know, I mean, I tried some, I sampled, you know, some of it, and
Yeah, we like to name things after France, but at the same time, the pronunciation does not quite translate so well.
It makes it, exotic and quite, I don't know, like mysterious. I like it. I think it sounds pretty cool. Sounds pretty cool.
Well, we're glad that you've enjoyed your trip, and thank you so much for talking with us today.
Well, thank you, and thanks, again for, the grant and when you're doing research, getting, fellowships is helpful in many ways, and I'm really happy I got to come to Frankfurt, and it's a beautiful little town, and I'm getting great memories from this area and my experience here at KHS. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Within Kentucky, a high school education has gone from being the privilege of the elite few to something that is available to all of its citizens. As today's episode showed us, however, we should never take public education for granted, nor should we forget educators like those at Pine Mountain who fought to provide greater educational opportunities to the youth of Kentucky. This brings another episode to a close. I would like to thank our guest, Adrien Lievin, for talking with me today. Kentucky Chronicles is presented by the Kentucky Historical Society with support from the Kentucky Historical Society Foundation. Our show is recorded and edited by Gregory Hardison. Thanks to Dr. Stephanie Lang for her support and guidance. Our theme music is used courtesy of Pixabay. To learn more about our publication, the Register of the Kentucky Historical Society, or to learn more about our Research Fellows program, please visit our website, history.ky.gov. If you have enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe. It really helps us to know how we are doing. You can also help us build a following by telling your friends to subscribe.